I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with a cattle market summary for the week ending April the 17th, with this 2015 cattle market rally that's been really impressive, and a lot more impressive than many of us thought it would be, coming from the weak points that we had there at the end of last year and at the start of this calendar year. It's kind of run out of steam now. We've got to the point where planting season is upon us, so a lot of your farmer feeders are pulling back from buying their feeder cattle. Your grass interests have kind of pulled back because we've got to the point where turnout time is upon us now, so they're kind of backing off buying these calves and stocker cattle. Last week's colossal failure in the fat cattle trade really sapped a lot of energy out of the cattle market all the way down to the calves. And your futures market's been pretty tough and pretty volatile again here in the last couple of weeks, and ended last week on a down hard note, and kind of started your cash markets out this week on a sour note. And as you look at your Cattle Market Central detailed summary there, you see that yearling feeder cattle into the week to $4 lower. Your calves were $5 to $10 lower. Still pretty good demand for true stocker cattle, but we just don't see that many of them right now. They're mostly all gone. We're not seeing enough of them in numbers for buyers to put loads or anything together. So you see a spot where you see some heavy 5 weights that are in a thin condition, light 6 weights that really spark up and sell on a higher trend, but you're not seeing enough of those to really get a good feel of the market. But we saw some good moisture around this week. Rain and snow up in the northern plains fell, and pretty widespread too, and it's going to help our pasture situation and get some moisture back into these crops for these guys to before they start planting, and really going to have things in pretty decent shape all through the central part of the United States. But your feedlots pulled their orders in this week, as we talked about some of the reasons a little bit earlier. And we've been kind of rocking along where these feedlots have just been buying cattle right along because the fat market has stayed up there pretty high. They knew they was going to lose some ground coming into this spring and early summer, but as long as they could keep it up, they figured they're in pretty good shape on what they were buying, and their inputs are pretty reasonable. Fuel's pretty cheap, interest is cheap. Corn prices we're figuring are going to be pretty much the same as they've been, but still your feedlots just kind of backed off, and they've got, most of them are pretty well full right now. They've got a big wall of fat cattle that they need to get sold, and then they'll have a lot of empty pens getting ready for the cattle, the first cattle to come off the double stock pastures there this summer. But still pretty decent prices, we can't complain at all. It's higher than most of us thought it would be at this time of the year. At F&T Livestock Market in Palmyra, Missouri, they sold a short load of steers, weighed 735 pounds at $240.75. And for the Midwest, that's an awful good price, but a good strong price there that you saw in several markets. And but when you get into the calves, we saw rain and mud in the southeast, and that really hurt the local demand. And then on top of that, you had fewer orders coming in for lightweight cattle to put out on these big, vast rangelands here. And so that really hurt the market. And if our big sale barns in the southern plains and the direct markets in the southern plains like Oklahoma and southwest Missouri and southern Kansas, if that's the true test of the yearling feeder market, your southeast is absolutely the true test of your calf market. You read the reports, it might say feeder cattle, they're pretty much all calves. You don't go to a lot of southeastern markets and see cattle that are ready to go into the feedlots. Pretty much all calves. That's the way they do their business down there, and they rely on western orders to take all those calves and to supply demand for those. But like we said, pretty much everybody's already through putting their grass cattle together. And then when we took that local demand out because of all the rain and mud there, we saw some pretty sharply lower prices there. And like we say, we called them $5 to $10 lower, and the full decline there was seen in the southeast. But even when you get to working back towards the middle part of the United States and getting into some bigger sales that normally sell bunches of cattle, where the southeast predominantly sells their calves one at a time, but even those bigger sales had to see a lot of small groups and single head lots and stuff like that, because we're getting into the time where we're getting a lot of cleanup sales, a lot of your less desirable producer cattle are starting to come in. You see a lot of your farmers starting to just dump new crop calves on the market because they need to get busy farming, and that's what they really want to do anyway, and they haven't weaned their calves or give them all their shots or anything. So a lot of sorting to try to get those calves merchandised. Anytime you chop those cattle up in those bigger auctions that are used to seeing bunches, you start chopping them up into 2-3 head single lot deals, it's going to hurt your market, and it's pretty much hurt the market this week. But you see guys, they're still going after calves, and they're looking for these lightweight calves because especially the last few years when calves have gotten so high, a lot of guys are putting in backgrounding facilities to buy these little peewee calves and try to keep them alive because there's so many options on them. You can, see a market that will make you some money. You can peddle them anytime. There's very few things that are as liquid as feeder cattle. You can move them about 6 days a week, almost any part of the country. So there's a lot of options on them lighter weight calves, a lot of guys going after them. But you see a big price spread as you start going down. At the North Arkansas Livestock Market in Green Forest, Arkansas this week, you saw a ring full of black steers weigh 479 pounds, bring $287.50. It's a pretty decent price. We've been using $3 and a 500 pounder as a benchmark, and the market was quite a bit lower this week, so figure that's still pretty decent. But you just take about 21 pounds off of that, and those first steers I told you about were all black, had a mixed colored bunch of cattle, weighed 458 pounds, bring $310. And you just see that the price just quickly go up as you start to back off of those weights there. And all that information there comes through Cattle Market Central and available just as soon as those cattle leave the ring there. And it's really good information. If you haven't gone on cattlemarketcentral.com yet, you really need to. But you can see how those buyers are real willing to push that price as they get those weights lighter. And it's not that that's going to make up the load, but they can fill in on those $310 little steers with some odds, singles, and they know they're going to have some more mixed calves to go on there, really get that price back down and send them to somebody. And there's just so many more options on them lighter weight calves. You can take them to grass and then come back, take them to wheat later at a heavier weight. You can sell them anywhere along the line, turn them out and contract them. There's just a lot of things you can do with them real lightweight calves. But talking about this fat cattle trade that happened last week, like we said earlier, a colossal failure on your cattle feeders' part there. They really had the packers behind the 8 ball, had extremely tight supplies of market-ready cattle, markets shooting up $2, $3, $4 every week, and just all of a sudden lost it all there in about a week and a half. And we know that the packers been running on negative margins, but it doesn't hurt their feelings whenever these cow-calf guys, the inputs are costing more than they're getting back for their calves, or your backgrounders and cattle feeders are used to running in the red all the time. So, it's a tough deal, but you've got to get all you can out of a good market, and these feedlots really blew it this last week. They were bound determined to get a little more money for cattle. And then these packers come out with this deal, we're going to buy cattle for 15 to 30 day delivery, sharply lower. And for some reason, guys went ahead and took it because they knew they've got bigger show lists coming down the line. But as they did that, they lost so much market position. And then this week, they came in, and all those cattle that sell off of last week's highs or last week's weighted average, a lot of those guys thought they were going to go back to the previous week. But as the reported information comes in to market news there, those 15 to 30 day cattle were still included in the highs for the week and the weighted average. So that's what everybody got this week that sells shirt tails off of last week's trade. So they lost all that market position too. And then this week, they didn't even have to do the 15 to 30 day deal. They knocked it another $2 to $3. So live prices are now $160 to $161, where just 2 weeks ago, they were up to $170. And how they lost all that and really historic tight numbers of market-ready cattle is hard to believe. And your packers had really a modern-day tight record last week for a non-holiday kill. This week they bumped it up 30,000 head. still very light in the whole scheme of things, but you know, they're working a hard deal too. These beef buyers are not delving in and buying these beef cuts like you would think they would this time of year, because they're higher, and they're just really holding off. They're just as shrewd as the packers are, and they're not running any features or specials on beef in the supermarkets or anything. They're continuing to offer specials on the competing proteins. And at some point they're going to have to come in, because people are going to eat steaks and hamburgers. But right now they're not tipping their hand yet. But that pretty much wraps up your cattle market summary for this week. Check out DV Auction. If you haven't got on there and watched some of these live auctions, you're missing out. Within the next couple of weeks, we've still got a lot of purebred production sales, bull sales. We've got replacement heifer type sales. We've got horse sales. We're going to have some goat sales, sheep sales, show pig sales, real estate sales, hay sales, and we're even going to sell some greyhound dogs. So get on DV Auction if you haven't already, and check out this report and more information at dvauction.com or the stockexchangenews.com. And from the home office here in Maysville, Missouri, we'll talk to you next week.